Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia, and today I'm going to do another episode in my Once in a While series called Time Warp Tuesday. Now, I am still working my way through that backlog of tags, but I just got to thinking about this Time Warp Tuesday that I've done several times, and it's been a really long time since I did one, and I got to kind of missing it, so I decided I really want to do that today. So, this, if you haven't seen one of these, this is when I go into my reading journals. Now, I have paper reading journals going back to about the year 2000. And so I just grab one at random and then I kind of open it to a time that's concurrent to now, but in another year. And I see what I was reading. And what we usually find out is that it is a very mixed bag of things that I remember, don't remember, still think sound like great books, cringy books, and just things that make me question my neurology, because sometimes it's a walk down memory lane and sometimes it's a walk down memory loss lane, because there's books in here that I can write a page and a half in this journal, but I have no memory of this book whatsoever. So this time is no different. I am looking at the time around now, like end of spring, beginning of summer of 2007. That is the year that I have pulled out. And I glanced through them so that I could pull the ones off the shelf that I actually own. And there's this a little string kind of in the middle of this that it was kind of scary, because I'm looking at this in my own handwriting that at least one of these, I've never even heard of this book, or so I would tell you, but apparently I did read it. So I can't tell if 2007 seems like recently or a really long time ago, and these books aren't helping either, because some of them, they seem like I read them more recently, and the others, it seems like ancient history. So let's take a look. So the first one, starting in late spring 2007, was Night Watch by Sarah Waters. I do have a copy of it. Sarah Waters is one of my favorite authors. It's time for a mini rant once again about Sarah Waters and her reluctance to release her next novel. This is not her most recent novel. There's one more, I think, after this, called The Paying Guests, which is a really fun book to read. This one is excellent as well. This is one of my favorite ones, and it is a historical fiction novel set during World War II. I think there's several people, 3 or 4 Londoners, kind of does a forward and back kind of thing in time, and she's written a lot of books that take place in the 19th century, but the last couple of books have been 20th century, but still historical. And this one moves around amongst these 4 people and what their experiences were during the war, and I think also before and after the war, as I recall. It's definitely a book I'd be interested in rereading. Most of her books I've only read once. I did reread Fingersmith last year, and I would definitely consider rereading Night Watch. In my journal, I said, I thought this was very good. The 20th century setting was less exotic than her Victorian stories. This seemed more grounded and subtle, the relationships more realistic. And then it gets into spoiler stuff. But I do remember it pretty well, and that I really did love it. So we're starting off strong, but we're going to go downhill. I'm just, spoiler alert. The next one was Possession by A.S. Byatt. Another chunky one. And when I read it in 2007, it was a reread. I think this is one of those quality paperback book club editions, and I've talked about that before, and I know there's some other fans of that, but those paperbacks have held up. They're not yellowy, they're not brittle. I wish that thing was still in business, but I still see them sometimes in used bookstores. But anyway, so I bought this when it was a new book, and I read it then, and it was like all the buzz or whatever back in, what year? It was in the 80s. No, 1990. And then in 2007, I believe that my book club, we decided, my in-person book club that I was in, everyone had read this back in the day, and we all wanted to read it again. So I did reread it, and I feel like I don't think I loved it as much the second time around. I think that I found some flaws in it that didn't didn't jump out at me the first time, or it just wasn't as enchanting. That's kind of the mood I recall from rereading the book. Let's see what I said in the journal. Okay, most of it is too spoilery, but it does say at the end, um, this story was frustrating, period. Again, period. So yeah, I think I found the characters and their choices and the relationships to be kind of frustrating and disappointing in the book. And there's no helpful blurb. All the blurbs are like those kind of bloated commentaries. This intelligent, literary, and ambitious thriller, I don't remember it being a thriller, will take its place alongside The Name of the Rose and Waterland as Umberto Eco's scholarly monk and Graham's. Why do they feel like they have to name check the characters out of two men's novels to explain how this novel is good? That's irritating. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. Let's see. Here, and the next one compares her to Hawthorne. Wow, you know what? The blurbs themselves could be the blurbs from 1990. This could be a whole dissertation right here. Okay, never mind about that. I know it takes place in the 19th century, and there's some convoluted secrets and romances and consequences, and it is a literary, I don't know, thriller. There's some mystery and some, I don't know, I don't remember. I really loved it, and then I didn't like it as much. That's it. Oh boy. Okay, the next one, Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. So this was the first time I read a Gillian Flynn book, and I will tell you now, it took me not one, not two, but three times to decide that I didn't want anything more to do with Gillian Flynn, or really the whole little cottage industry of Gone Girly books that she kind of sparked. This kind of thriller with very, very big zigzags, and it gets, the first time you read it, it's kind of surprising and fresh, and then after 10 or 12 people do it, it's not much of a surprise anymore. It's kind of a formula. And my experience with her books, so I do say in here, so this is me reading a Gillian Flynn book for the first time, and I said, this was certainly a page turner and a good debut novel. The mystery itself could have been better. And then I go into some details I cannot tell you, and then I complain that I didn't like the way that things turned out at the end. And this is what I found out when I read a few of her books, is that I always thought the premise sounded really interesting. It would start off strong, I get all into it, and then I hated the ending every time. 3 times in a row. And then I stopped. And I guess she's still writing books I haven't read, but that's where I left off. And I kept on making that mistake and reading a few other authors. And so now, even if a book gets compared to her, that's like a huge turnoff to me. So anyway, it's funny to see that's when it started, the little the Gillian Flynn jag. So anyway, and if you love Gillian Flynn, no offense, but that's my experience, and it doesn't work for me. All right, the next one is a book that I have, A Spot of Bother by Mark Haddon. And I believe that I purchased this book because I had really enjoyed the dog in the nighttime, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, which I also have back on the shelf. This one was more of a family drama, as I recall. When I looked at this again, when I was picking it off the shelf, and it kind of sounds like something I might read. I don't remember the details very strongly, but I do have an essence of having read this and thinking about the differences between those two books. And I did say, this is certainly what you would call dark humor. I laughed at a lot of situations, attitudes, and just word choices here, even though it was usually concerning someone else's misery. So I guess dark humor with kind of a family drama. It seems like it has to do with a family. There's sort of a retirement age couple, and then their grown children, and one of them is getting remarried to someone that this is causing a big fallout in the family because they think he's inappropriate. And I don't know if he is or not, or if they just have it in for him. I can't remember. So if you read this book, what did you think? Because I have forgotten, and I wonder if it's good enough to ever want to reread again, because I still have it, and apparently I liked it. Okay, the next is a book. I swear to God, I've never heard of this book. I have no clue what this is, and my brief synopsis here did not help me out. And then I looked it up on Amazon, and I read multiple reviews, and absolutely zero bells have rung out across the land of my mind. And it is called The Drowning Tree by Goodman. But I can kind of see why I did not leave it any storage space inside my brain, because here's what I said, and the entry is about this big. Total fluff with a Scooby-Doo crazy ending. Fun infused with some literary stuff to offset the guilt of the fluff. Okay, that's about it. So I guess it was just a really disposable kind of book to me. It sounded like it was one of those books that was where and I've read this book like 25 times. A bunch of people have gone to a school, a high school, a boarding school, a college, whatever, and then years later, and something happened. Someone died or disappeared or something awful, and then years later, there's some reason that they all have to come back again reluctantly, and then all this old shit gets dredged up. So how many times have you read this book? So I've read that book and it's been a good book. I've read that book and it has sucked. And apparently I read it and didn't remember it at all. So that structure has happened time and again. And this time, I don't know. I don't remember it. Now the next one is kind of embarrassing because I am familiar with this book, as in I am aware of this book. I've heard of this book and this author, and I know a little bit about the history of the book. You could have fooled me that I had read this book, and it is The Inheritance of Loss by Kiran Desai. This won the Booker Prize, and I don't know if I read it for my book club or just because I wanted to, and I wrote 2 pages on it. I don't remember this book whatsoever. It says I really struggled to get into it and avoided starting it for a long time. And then I thought or hoped that I'd surprise myself and get really engaged. Alas, it was not to be. For some reason, I was most interested in Bijou. Who's that? I don't remember. And hoping that he would make it, but about halfway through, it was obvious. It was one of those books where everyone will experience a destiny of disappointment. Okay, I hope that wasn't big time spoilers, but it is just gone. It is wiped. Maybe because I didn't like it. It has been erased. Have you read it? Did you love it? I didn't, apparently. And guess what? I don't remember the next 2 books either. We have, maybe 3. I mean, what was I doing? What was I doing in the summer of 2007? How hot was it that I have obliterated everything? At least I feel like hopefully I read better, more memorable books now than I did then. I read a book called The Uses of Enchantment. No, not the old thing by Bruno Bettelheim. This is by Heidi Julavits. I didn't like this one either. I don't even understand what I wrote about it. Let's move on. Charity Girl by Michael Lowenthal. Now this one looked kind of interesting when I looked up the synopsis. It's about World War I setting and a girl who gets named by a boyfriend as being his last contact. And he's a soldier and he's diagnosed with, I guess, syphilis, and they make him list whoever he was with. And so this girl, there's an institution where a bunch of girls have been placed. And so that sounds kind of interesting, but I don't remember reading the book. The tragedy of my memory continues. Okay, I kind of remember this one. But I think what happened was I read a string of books that I just didn't love. Either they just weren't good at all, or they weren't good enough. And maybe this was a turning point when I started reading better books, because the next one I also did not like. And I wrote something in my journal that kind of gives a clue about where I started moving to next in my reading choices. It was The Grave Tattoo by Val McDermid. This is a mystery. I do remember it has something to do with an island and a ship and a mystery or a hidden identity or a lost information or a lost manuscript or something. Something goes lost and there's water. All right. Uh-oh, here comes Moo. Okay, let's not do that. Okay, he went down to the other side of the desk. We'll see how we go. It might get capsized. This book marks the end of my current fluffy period. I'm detoxing from thrillers, mysteries, and books that are supposed to dazzle me with their edgy, tricky, surprising structure. This was a mystery that was not mysterious because it was obvious who the murderer was. Something in parentheses that I can't tell you. And it was also obvious that the literary mystery wouldn't get very far either. I'm officially swearing off of literary-based whodunits. Blech. That's the end of the review. Okay, and then we're going to end on a good note with a book I still have, and that is Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry. So this was my antidote after reading that string of unsatisfying mysteries and thrillers. I picked this, what would probably now be something I would read as what I call quiet gems. And it is I remember this. Okay, here's the subtitle. The Life Story of Jayber Crow, Barber, of the Port William membership, as written by himself. And so it's a fictional memoir about a man who lives in a small town. And it's just one of those quiet, everybody in town and all the little tiny dramas that make up the immensity of someone's actual life. And it's pretty long, and I think it moves pretty slow. And I wonder how much I would either really love it even more now or not. But I think I would actually appreciate a book like this, but it was kind of an unusual choice for me back at this time. I think my mom gave it to me as a gift because she really loved it. But what I said was, it was a good book, but very slow paced. I've read so many rushy, tense books that I had to discipline myself to read a different way. Things happen, but gradually over time, and that's okay. Then a spoiler. So yeah, I like that I actually recorded those thoughts about being aware of how I was reading and wanting to make a change and feeling the difference in the readings. I think we talk on BookTube a lot about that now, about different ways to read and slowing down and things like that. But so it's interesting to see those topics coming into my mind back in 2007. So there you have it. That's what I was reading during that little span of time in that year. I don't know if you can remember what you were reading back then, or if you could relate to anything I talked about in this video or these books. So please let me know. Leave me a comment. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you are new. And I will be back probably on Friday for Friday Reads. So have a great week, and I will see you soon.